the methodology. And boundary partners are defined as the individuals, groups, and organizations that the project or the program is working with directly and with whom you expect opportunities for influence. So that means the influence, though, is going two ways. I expect to be influenced by working with them, and I expect an opportunity to influence them as well. It's a reciprocal relationship, and that's why you're calling it a partner. Boundary is because there are boundaries to the relationships, how many with whom that I can have. And so a boundary partner is a nested concept. It's this idea that there are spheres of influence. I have boundary partners, they have boundary partners, and so on and so on and so on. And again, going back to that web, we're all a part of the same system, but my spheres of influence go only so far. So if you see me as the blue, my boundary partners could be the red, and then their boundary partners could be the green. And each and every one of us have our own set of boundary partners. This is a simplified version, of course. In reality, it's often more complicated than that. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my voice. Let me just take a second to take a drink. So you may choose your boundary partners because you actually want to influence them directly, their changes in their behaviors, or you may choose them because of the influence they may have on someone else. So a quick example of this is I may choose to work directly with nurses because I want to influence the way nurses work. Or I may choose to work with nurses because they will influence youth in a community, and they're my intermediary towards their boundary partners. So you make your decisions on who are your boundary partners for a whole host of different reasons. But once you've identified your boundary partners, how are you going to measure their behavior change? Outcome mapping has something called progress markers, and that's the tool that is used. And progress markers, let me just say to start off with, for every boundary partner, you could have anywhere from 3 to 30 progress markers. I've seen groups manage those. And what they are is this graduated set of statements describing the changes in behavior in that boundary partner. So each progress marker will describe a changed relationship, a changed action, a changed activity by the boundary partner. A change in something that they do, the boundary partner does. And once you have, say, 3, 15, 20 of these progress markers, it shows the complexity of the change process. It doesn't limit the change to, at this point, my boundary partner was like this. 6 years later, here's where they were. It describes the smaller changes along the way. It doesn't have to describe every single change. Let's say it's like milestones along the way. And generally, progress markers can be monitored through observation, and they allow you, if you collect data about them as you go, they allow you to see unintended results. They allow you to ask questions about what you're doing, how effective you're being, what's the relationship of your boundary partners to others. So they're really, what you're trying to do is you're in a process, your partners are in a process, and what you're trying to do is support the deepest change possible. I quite like a ladder as a visual when I think about progress markers, because the way we break down progress markers is into 3 levels. What I'd expect to see my boundary partner doing, what I'd like to see my boundary partner doing, and what I'd love to see my boundary partner doing. Expect to see progress markers are progress markers that describe sort of initial changes. Often they're in reaction to the activities of your project or program. Like to see is when your boundary partners are really starting to take ownership of what you're doing. They're starting to think about and do things differently, maybe outside of the context of the project. And love to see are those really deep transformations where your boundary partner is behaving in such a way that they're contributing in the most, in the deepest possible way to the vision or goal of your relationship together or of your project. And ideally, progress markers are developed with your boundary partner. It's really not intended to be something where I define for someone else how their change is going to happen. It's intended to be a participatory process where you negotiate back and forth about your expectations of one another. And when you think of the progress markers as a ladder, it all looks very neat. And when neat and tidy, as though change will just happen, in a very concise and straightforward way. But in fact, of course, reality, sorry, I forgot expect to see, like to see, love to see. Reality is much more messy than that. And when you use progress markers to collect data over time about the changes in your boundary partner's behaviors, what you'll see is that you get a story of change, or a rich narrative about the change process. Sorry, I'm trying to go so quickly that I'm losing my own tongue. And what you'll see is that some of the progress markers you developed at the beginning, they were inappropriate. That's not the context change, your boundary partner changed, something changed, and so you leave those behind. There's more time between some progress markers than others. Sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 5 steps backwards. You know, the reality of change in individuals, groups, or organizations is an iterative process. And if you collect data over time to evaluate this change process, then that will help you understand the complexity of what your partners are going through. And in outcome mapping, each of these changes in behavior are the outcomes. That's the outcome of your work. Although this is certainly not the only way to collect data about progress markers, outcome mapping does provide something called an outcome journal, which is really exactly what it sounds like, a journal, like a diary or a monitoring form, which helps you collect data about the change that happened, unexpected changes that you didn't anticipate, the actors and factors that contributed to the change, and how the evidence that the change happened, and any learnings you can draw, not both, but about what happened, how it happened, or why it happened. So it's a form that can help you collect that kind of data on the changes in behavior.